Girl,
is
we're coming
blowing
up.
up. Jeez.
Oh, good, good. Hey, you know what? You can speak to that. Hey, everybody, welcome to the Santita Jackson Show, the second hour. That's right. Attorney Mark Fancher said I should have been on the first hour because y'all were chopping it up. Of course we were. That's what we do here on AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota, and on the Santita Jackson and Friends page on Facebook. But I want you to meet the morning stars on the Santita Jackson Show. Hey, Bernadette. Hey, Robert. Hey, Andre. Hey, Tin Man. Sending you all so much love. And Dwight McKee is recovering so well. We're going to get him on. I don't want to get him up too early. I'm trying to get him, I'm trying to have him do his thing, but he's going to be doing great. But everybody, please like and share the show, like and share the show. And you know what? I roll hard. And, I love my soror, Anastasia Sanat, or attorney Anastasia Sanat. She's a wonderful human being. And we have some points of disagreement, and that's cool. And she and I are going to hug it out, love each other, and keep it moving. But I just have to say, having grown up in the civil rights movement, when I see marchers, number one, it's such an act of courage because particularly in this environment, you are being tracked.
Yeah.
And now they're coming up with social credit scores. Yeah, all that's coming to the United States. They have lists now of people who are considered to be subversive.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure I'm on it.
Mm-hmm.
That's real. So when you start with the people who are marching on behalf of their relatives over in Palestine, in Gaza and the West Bank, no, 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 no. So you're assigning credit to the status quo. And the status quo enforced slavery. The status quo enforces colonialism.
Mm.
The status quo is why your royal blackness is over here, not in Africa. Yeah, I said it. Because you were brought here on a business project to do work that you were not going to be paid for.
Mm.
It wasn't for free. You just weren't paid. So don't tell me that Dr. King tried to lead, because by inference, I infer and you imply that Dr. King was leading a march of rabble rousers. Yeah, they were rabble rousers, but they were not government agents. They were not agents provocateurs. That's not what they were. And I don't hear you talking about Jerry Seinfeld's wife, Jessica, and Bill
Mm.
Ackman, who paid these actors, some of whom are from the IDF, to break up these encampments in California in a violent way. You don't put them on blast. In fact, you don't even talk about it. While he's taking his children to camps where they kill Palestinians for fun. Oh no, 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 no. No, that makes me HOTTT. Stop believe I mean, I don't know how you believe the people on one hand who oppress you, and you know that, but then you believe them at the same time. I don't get it. I don't. So there's a lot going on in Chicago, and what we're not talking about in Chicago is we're not talking about the demonstrations outside. But let me just say this at the top: we were talking about the speeches that were given by President Obama, uh, forever First Lady Michelle Obama, Bernie Sanders. You had Miss Also Brooks, who's running for the U.S. Senate in Maryland, and you really did see how America, at least on the face of it, at least in this first phase of change, has really changed. And they, gave a general, not a tribute, but they acknowledged Reverend Jackson on Monday. But these are all the changes that he fought for and instituted. But actually, he fought for more. Everybody. This was not just about getting black faces in high places. Oh no, This is about making a fundamental change, creating the beloved community. So let's get clear on that. Let me just say, coming into this discussion as a point of personal privilege, I am so proud of Michelle Obama in particular. I thought that her husband was great last night. Absolutely, I thought that Bernie Sanders was magnificent. But I was moved in a profound way because I know that the first lady never wanted to go into politics, but somehow or another she's found a mission, a mission in which she sees she can help somebody and she's trying to. She's very clear on what she means. I believe she's clear on what she means to young girls who are seeing her. And she doesn't have to look like she has a white foreparent. Although, like black people, she has them. We all do. What my father say, we have black foremothers and white forefathers. Oh, almost all of us do. But that's not her look. And she was quite forward in black jobs and affirmative action for people who get privilege from their parents. And I was just very proud of her last night. And that having been said, I don't want to stop there because she made these comments while the Supreme Court has ruled that affirmative action will no longer be used to admit our kids into undergraduate institutions. That's a problem. At the same time, DEI is being wiped out. That's a problem. At the same time, the Institute for Policy Studies has said it will take 500 more years for Black people to achieve economic equality in the United States. I need some policy changes, y'all. Because that's not because Black folks are lazy. That's a plan to keep us down. And I need that rectified. Black families are projected to have negative wealth by 2085. I need that to be rectified. Dr. LaShawn Latrice, community psychologist from Make Noise for Change, Attorney Mark Fancher, National Conference of Black Lawyers. I need some changes because we got some real problems that need to be addressed. But that having been said, a lot of people talked last night, and we're building to this crescendo for Thursday night when you will hear from the Democratic nominee for president. So let's talk about this, everybody. Let's talk about what you heard last night. And I want you all to join us on the chat on the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel. Please like and subscribe there. Please like and subscribe. And everybody, please like this show. You're helping us with the algorithms when you do that. Like the show, Ashley. Like this one too. Like, hey, Robert and Velma and Andre. Everybody like Shirley from beautiful Philadelphia. Bernadette. Oh, yes, Dwight McKee has been in the hospital. Yes, he has been, but he is recovering nicely. Thank God for that. And so, everybody, please, 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 want to know what your thoughts are. What did you think of last night? What did you think of last night? And, well, let's start with you. Whew. Well, let's start with you. Well, no, let me put Attorney Fancher on chill. Let me ask. It's okay, Dr. LaShawn Latrice, because in the last hour we were talking about what the visuals of Michelle met. I mean that she was wearing braids. She looked absolutely beautiful. She looked rested. She looked like there was a lot of stress that was off of her, and maybe just at this point, having reached that milestone of 60 years of age, you start looking at things and saying, hey, you know what? I'm going to say this because I'm going to say something that needs to be said. Although I must say, when we were growing up, she was not very political at all. And I was from probably the most political Black family in Chicago, but that was not a place where we were at all. At all. And she talked about that. She was like, you're political. I'm not. Well, that is no longer the case. So, Dr. LaShawn Latrice.
I am so glad that she was able to inspire. I love it. I love it. I've always loved her. I think that having her there was the one thing that I thought was amazing. What I don't think it did was resonated with little girls because little girls wasn't watching the DNC last night. That's the reality.
Well, what did it mean to you as a grown woman then?
For the grown women, I think that it's very inspirational. I think that even listening to some of the people who observed what was going on, I think people see what they want to see. And of course, we know and love First Lady Obama for everything that she's represented. So we can never take that away from her. She is amazing in that respect. But I think that it didn't stop there for me. I still thought about everything that was going on for the last couple of days. I thought about everything that's still going to take place. And I'm sick of hearing about Donald Trump. I'm sick of people using, talking about him and the things that he's done to cover up the issues that are not being discussed. And I think that the narrative that's being shaped, or that's attempting to be shaped, they want this to look like when Obama ran for president. And I don't see that. I know people do, but I don't see that. I remember that as clear as day. I remember talking to my father, and I'm a daughter of a Vietnam vet, by the way. So my
Okay.
father has been, he has been an educator of what was going on in the world since I could talk. And I was always one of those young people that always liked to know everything that people were talking about. I wanted to know who Jesse Jackson was. I wanted to know what Rainbow Push was. And then my grandmother was a historian. So those things were ingrained in us when we were young children. However, I could not watch the DNC without thinking about the people in the communities. I couldn't help but think about driving down the road right before you get to the United Center, and watching the barricades. I just could not. I would not want to be in one of those homes where I walked out and I had a gate in front of my house. It looks like I'm in some sort of prison in my own community. However, those people in the community were not the people at the DNC. And this is what I was saying on the earlier show. When we look at what's taking place around us, we look at the optics. I see something being shaped that they want us to see. And I think that hiding those things is escaping reality. So we're not living in a real world if we say, okay, I saw this wonderful speech and it changed my life, and we're just going to go on and keep going. No, because you had another guest on your show who kept it all the way real, and he talked about what's happening on both sides and how it's just a matter of from Democrat to Republican, one thing or the other, but it's the same. And see, I understand that politics are politics, but I also think that humanity taken away from politics is going to equal worse for our communities. So when we don't look at the human side of things, we don't look at the reality of the poverty and the destruction that's happening within our communities, we just pretty everything up so the DNC can just go on. And then what's going to happen next week? Everything's going to go back to being what? Negative. So I don't necessarily agree with just taking what I see. The speeches are wonderful. They've chosen some wonderful people, but I think propelling a certain message is detracting from the voices of the people that are outside. And I'm talking about the real people who are on the ground risking their lives to protest. People do not realize the type of things that you encounter. And I know many of you know, but for us, it is a serious situation, and we're not out there joking and laughing. It is serious. Those things that make us unified are the things that we're really willing to lock arms with and keep going.
Well, I mean, so if you, I mean, when you hear that these people were our agents of chaos, the people are protesting, what is your response to that?
It's unbelievable, unreal. There have been so many instances where we have had provocateurs or agitators. People are there, but when you're talking about people standing up for issues that where their relatives are being murdered, slaughtered, that's a serious thing. And so I take offense to it when people think that everyone out there is just agitating. Because to me, what it looked like when people say that, it looks like they're insinuating that we were agitating the DNC. And you know, that's poppycock, malarkey.
Oh, thank you for that. Thank you, thank you for using those words and not words that needed to be bleeped.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Oh,
And I'm just saying, you know, just think about it. When there is people, there are people that disagree with certain things. Um, you can't put the people against the DNC because the people are against the issues. So when you see the voices of the people unified enough to march down the street in thousands, that is a strong enough message to say, hey, we need to hear what they're talking about. We need to see what these issues are, because there are protests about a lot of different things taking
mhm.
place. And I notice people keep trying to shush that. But the real reality is when this DNC ends, these issues are still going to be there. And if the people don't feel like they're being heard, we're going to have to keep fighting. We're going to have to keep marching.
Well, what is it? You say Ashley said that Michelle Obama has found her voice. Uh, well, I think she's always had her voice. I think now she's not only willing to use it. I think the Democrats need to use it in this way because the zeitgeist, uh, Attorney Mark Fancher, is calling for people to say much more than they've been saying. I mean, because the pain out here is real. But so, what did you think of these speeches, of what you've seen? Tell me.
Yeah, it was in many ways fascinating and on some levels disturbing. And let me explain what I mean by that. The Obamas as a couple, present as a glorious success story. A wonderful example of a Black couple that through hard work has risen to the top, and that they represent, some of the best of what we would hope the human family would present. Uh, and I think that that's true when we look at it through the world's lens. But I also have to look at it through a Christian lens. And when I do that, it shows to me the great challenge of living as Jesus wanted us to live. And what you have two individuals who, from the outset, were probably very good people and probably are good people, want to be good people. But they, like all of us, are presented with the choices that Jesus warned us would be before all of us. And that is, are you going to follow the ways of the world, or are you going to follow my lead to the Father? My way is hard. My way will guarantee that the world will turn on you, that the world will attack you, that the world will crush you. The way of the world, if you follow it, will elevate you. It will glorify you. But it will also not necessarily bring me into the favor of the Father, bring you into the favor of the Father. And so I think on a number of occasions, Barack Obama in particular has been faced with these stark choices that he's had to make. I'm not an expert on his biography, but I do understand that he went on a spiritual journey that eventually led him to Christianity, and specifically to Jeremiah Wright's church. And during his first campaign, when they tried to attack him, they excerpted, for those who don't remember, a segment from one of Jeremiah Wright's sermons where he talks about how God is going to damn America. And they ran that on a loop, and they continued to approach Barack Obama and demanded to know why he is in a church like that, a church where they condemn the country that he lives in and the country that he presents himself as wanting to lead. And so he's faced with a choice. The choice that he made then was to say, what Jeremiah Wright stands for and what he says is not what I stand for and what I say. And therefore, I'm leaving his church and I reject him. And so what I choose to do is to pursue the presidency of the United States. Now, that's a stark choice. His alternative in that instance could have been to say, you have shown one excerpt of this man's sermon, and it has distorted his true message. Let us look at the entire sermon in context, and you will understand that what he's doing is he's pointing out to the moral shortcomings of the country that we all live in and that we love. And that if we understand that, we'll understand why God is not pleased. And I, as someone who subscribes to Christian values and someone who is committed to justice and to all of the things that Jesus came to teach us about, am committed to leading this country to a place where God will not want to damn it. That's why you should elect me. Had he chosen that alternative and been true to his faith, to his God, and to his pastor, he might not only have continued to stay in God's favor, but also continued to have the opportunity to win the presidency because God blesses in that way. But he made a choice. You know, he looked at the expediency of rejecting his spiritual leader so that he could achieve what the world was presenting him on a silver platter. And that's the choice he made. And those choices continued to be made as he went through his presidency, where he looked at the job description for the presidency, which is the job description that all presidents have, which requires you to do all kinds of things. It requires you to continue to shovel money and opportunities and resources into the mouths of a greedy, wealthy oligarchy made up of large multinational corporations and rich families. It requires that you wage war. It requires that you kill, that you assassinate overseas, that you turn a blind eye to the suffering of children in other parts of the world. These are all choices that had to be made in order for him to preserve his position as president of the United States, in order to fulfill the requirements of the job. And in doing so, in so many ways, he turned away from the spiritual path that he purported to have set out on. And so in order to reconcile those things, what he did is what so many of us do. And I'm using him as an example, but there's so many of us who are faced with the same dilemma. All of us are faced with the same dilemma, really, when it comes down to how we choose to participate politically. And what he has had to do is to compartmentalize. He has had to essentially look at the rest of the world and to present it both to himself and to the rest of us as an other, and to, in some way, on some level, elevate those who are in the United States to a privileged and special position as being the only people who really count. So when he stands before the DNC and he presents this grand vision of what the world is supposed to be, he's really just talking about the United States. You know, a vision of a place where people have the opportunity to live and to love, a place where people look out for each other, where people's needs are taken care of, where we have these values that we reinforce. He's talking about the United States because he understands that the price of that is that other people around the world will have to suffer if we continue to follow the playbook that the United States has written over the generations. And so Jesus, when he came, said that all people are to be loved, regardless of who they are or where they are in the world. And to say that in order to preserve the privilege and the opportunities and the prosperity of the United States, we have to ignore them. You know, we can't even say one word in these speeches last night about the suffering of the parents whose children have been killed in Gaza. You know, the count by many sources approaches nearly 250,000, and we don't even talk about that. We don't talk about the culpability of the United States in creating destabilization and suffering and violence in Haiti. We don't talk about the mischief that's being created by the United States in Venezuela, where they're trying to do what we say that we're doing, you know, have an election, an honest election, and they have an honest election. And the United States tried to do everything that it could to corrupt that election, and now trying to discredit the results of it. We don't talk about all of these things. What we do is we just talk about this vision that we have for the privileged who live in the United States of America, and even giving some credence to the Republican rhetoric about immigration. And underneath all of that, whether it's the Democratic Party or the Republican Party talking about it, is the idea that the only people who deserve to have this type of privileged lifestyle are the people who are already here within these borders. Ignoring history and the fact that so many of the people who are coming across the border are people who are indigenous to this hemisphere and who did not have a border in the first place and who moved freely back and forth. And that this territory that people claim as theirs was actually stolen from these indigenous peoples and these indigenous nations. So, on the one hand, yes, the Obamas talked about a lot of values and ideals and a vision that appeals to the best of us as human beings. But on the other hand, when we dig beneath that, we see a stark contradiction that exists between what they're saying and what they envision for the entire world, not just the people within this country.
Hey, everybody, weigh in, weigh in, weigh in. I want to know what your thoughts are. Um, because I think we need to understand what we're looking at. Because Attorney Fancher and Dr. LaShawn Latrice, in order to gain the world, you do have to give up your soul. That's why you're cautioned to do the opposite. Because that is the people who hold the keys, that's what they want from you. They do. And you can fight real hard, and you can get in there and go, ooh, I didn't want this, but you signed up, and once you get in the bubble, you can't get out. And look, and I get it. And all I'm saying to you all, as Thalia says, talk about reparations, talk about taxes, talk about poverty, talk about the federal minimum wage, talk about the defense budget, single payer health care. See, because while we're looking at that and while we're celebrating this moment, Dr. Latrice, are you still there? I think, I'm going to have to call her on another.
Yes, I'm still here.
Oh, okay. The thing is, while DEI, while equality is under threat, I can't separate that from that. I mean, that it made me feel good. I felt great, and I did feel good. I did feel great, but I need more than that. I've been very blessed. I knew I was going to come home last night to my own home. I knew that the medicine that I need, I've got it. I've got a freezer and a refrigerator full of food. My parents, praise the Lord, even in their 80s, praise God, they're doing well. And even with my father, as he has health challenges, God has blessed us. God has blessed us. But I know most people are not similarly blessed. And we're not rich people at all. But I guess we're rich because we have each other. First of all, we have God. Somebody went to bed hungry last night. Somebody was sleeping in the park last night. Somebody was in a shelter scared to death with their children, praying that they would not be sexually attacked if they were able to get into the shelter, because some shelters don't have enough room in the inn. Amen?
Amen.
So when you have this opportunity, Attorney Fancher, Dr. Latrice, I got to see you talk about the things. I got to see you talk about all these things, because God gives you this space for that purpose. And I saw the first lady, the former first lady, really trying to do that, within the confines of where she is. But so when I push you all, it's because I'm pushing for the least of these. My father would go to these jails and these prisons, Attorney Fancher, and talk to people, and people would ask him why he would do it, because he wouldn't be paid for it. He said, because I might reach somebody. One day he bumped into a young man who was in there, who walked up to him and said, you know what, Reverend, when I get out of here, I want to work for you. My father didn't know that he had a brother who sold drugs and another one who was an addict. That their mother was working hard every day, but she was on the verge of an early death because she didn't have access to the health care, because she was living in poverty. That young man was Greg Mathis. Just, somebody you're going to touch. And when you listen to him on his shows, when you watch him work, First thing he did before he and his wife got this big money, before they did their show, his wife's a teacher. She opened up a community center in the middle of one of the most depressed areas in Detroit because they wanted to reach more kids. That's all I'm saying, Mark Fancher. That's all I'm saying, Attorney Fancher. That's all I'm saying, Dr. Latrice. Y'all, I mean, people come after me. I'm like, I'm trying to make the argument for you. I've been to school. Problem is, so many of our kids are not going to get to school. Can you afford to send your child to the University of Chicago for $100,000 a year, baseline sticker price, undergrad? Now they're not going to be able to be admitted. While everybody else over indexes because they have advantages because of their race, the disadvantage because of our race, we cannot mention. Don't play with me, Dr. Latrice. And then when I see people out here marching, you can't tell me that they're marching. You know, these are agitators, and they're making the DNC look bad. No, it's not about them looking bad. It's about you getting things right. Okay, Dr. Latrice, I've had my rant for the day, but I'm sure I've got another one up in me.
It's okay. It's okay. I'm enjoying it, and I thank you that that you're able to create this platform where you can be transparent, and you can also represent the questions that are not being asked in other spaces, and give us an opportunity to talk about what the community looks like, what the community feels, what they're saying, and how disconnected they are from all of these things. The speeches are wonderful, just like Attorney Mark Fancher said, they were wonderful. But is it going to resonate with the right group of people? Are they going to be received with the right spirit? Because if we're looking at things from a moral lens, we still have to remember that these are human beings that are being impacted by the political rhetoric of talking about Donald Trump over migrant crisis, over poverty, over violence. It's so many things that should be discussed that we don't want to discuss because we want to shape this narrative and make everyone think this is beautiful, just like the Barack Obama administration when he was running. But I just don't see that. And I understand that it's important for them to create the optics like that, but they have to understand that people are out here hurting. They're dying, they're hurting, and watching all of this grandiose celebration happen, and they're being excluded from the conversation.
When you really don't want Bernie Sanders, because Reverend wants to walk out with Bernie Sanders, and the Democrats said no, because he's not on message. Why? Because he's attacking the oligarchs, the funders who pushed Joe Biden out. Ain't nobody talking about that.
Nobody.
You think that was right? Look, and I have had my problems with Joe Biden and his policies, but I don't like and something that happens in the middle of the night that I can't see and I can't explain it. I think someone said the way is so plain that even a child can what? Hello, Attorney Fancher? Even a child can understand it.
Yes.
Now, I ain't no child, but I can understand what you explained to child. I can't understand that. But Angela Burns, you bring up something that I think that we can address. You said you understand why number 44, Barack Obama, separated himself from Reverend Wright. Reverend Wright was preaching some truth, your emphasis. However, it was some of the harsh manner in his delivery, again, your emphasis, which was an issue. I believe Reverend Wright said, God damn America, and that's wrong. He should have been saying, God bless America, and I believe Obama blessed America and continues to do so. Yes, America has multiple wrongs and misdeeds. That's why we must get Vice President Kamala Harris elected as president of these United States. Does anyone want to comment on that?
I would.
Okay. I don't know why I thought you would.
No, if you understand Christianity, if you understand what Jesus was trying to do and who he was, you would understand that Jeremiah Wright's sermon was in the truest prophetic tradition. Prophets of God, people who come and try and deliver the message of God, come to deliver one fundamental message, which is that he wants us to live a certain way. He's established for us the standards, the values that we're supposed to hold. And when we depart from that, when we don't love him, when we don't follow his directions, then he's not pleased with it. And if we can persist in it, then at a certain point, then he condemns it. And so the United States of America, from the outset, has been an entity that God has not been pleased with because it was established on stolen territory. You know, settlers came from Europe and they stole territory from indigenous nations, nations of people that were civilized and had been here for as far back as anybody knows. And when they didn't go willingly, then they embarked on a campaign of genocide against these people, wiped them out. And then, in order to develop the territory, they went across the ocean and they enslaved large numbers of Africans and brought them over here and made them do the work. God is not pleased with that. God was not pleased by the fact that the small group of elite, wealthy, propertied white men decided that this country would be for them and them alone, and that they would exclude everybody else, and that they would exploit everybody else. And the successors to this elite group have taken the form of multinational corporations and rich families and rich individuals, the military industrial complex and others, who continue to exploit and abuse others, who continue to in many ways make life miserable for the poor. This same group has spread its tentacles to establish an empire around the world, which they continue to control, maintain, and they continue to spread it through the use of force, through the use of violence. And God is not pleased with that. And during Barack Obama's administration, those of us who would want a Black president to have some interest in developing Africa and helping Africa to become strong so that the African world would be strong, instead, what he did is he used drones to go over and kill large numbers of Africans. He used the machinery of government to destabilize and destroy the infrastructure of Libya, the one country that was standing up against the empire and which was attempting to establish a continent that would be strong and self-sufficient and self-determining, and which would empower it. He destroyed it. God is not pleased with those kinds of things. So when Jeremiah Wright stands up and says God will damn America, he's only doing what a prophet does, which is pointing to those who are doing wrong and telling them that they're doing wrong to their face. And for the rest of us, you know, who have to make these decisions about where we stand, we can go for the idea that because this man stands up as president of the United States and he looks good, he's charismatic, he speaks well, and he makes us feel good, that we're going to go with that? Or are we going to stay on God's side? Are we going to continue to try and live as he would want us to live? And if we choose to be on God's side, then that may drive us to reject everything that we're seeing within the convention hall at the DNC. And it may cause us to say that our place is outside of that, in the streets, opposing what's going on the inside, or at least trying to raise issues that nobody's talking about on the inside. They're just talking about sunshine and light and wonder and the glorious things that America is. God bless America. While we on the outside in the streets are looking at the wholesale massacre of thousands and thousands of innocent children in Gaza, and nobody's talking about it or doing anything about it. And we're out here screaming and yelling and protesting and marching, trying to get somebody to do something about it. That's standing on God's side. So yes, when you have to deliver a prophetic message, sometimes you have to do it in a way that gets people riled up and upset. And that's why if you look at prophets, the Old Testament prophets on up to the apostles, and specifically Jesus, the people who stand up against the world are the ones that the world comes against and tries to destroy. In many cases, does destroy them. So many of the prophets were tortured and killed, exiled, marginalized. And so if the world's not doing something against you, it may be that you're not doing what you're supposed to do.
Wow, that's a lot. You know, and here we are, everybody. Because I have to tell you, I know it broke Reverend Wright's heart. And if you see him today, you see it. Because he absolutely loved Barack Obama. I just wish they could have resolved this privately, right? Because if someone gets to be too hot for you to touch, what you do is you have a talk about it and just say, you know, if they're open to it, and you just say, look, I'm trying to do this. And people understand, unless someone's trying to jam you. And that is not what Reverend Wright was trying to do. And it was a painful moment, I say, for everybody. I think, because you know what your preacher means to you. I mean, my pastor has been gone almost 5 years, Dr. Latrice and Attorney Fancher. I miss Reverend Evans every day. I talk about him every day. I reference something that he said to me every day. You know, I'm still moving in my place, and I was throwing out some papers, going through some papers. I found a prayer card that he gave me and he sits and he looks at you. You know, I have it right here. I said, because that's my pastor. That's my pastor, and I can't talk about that because I'll start crying. But you know, you all, it's when we engage in this critique, it's loving. No one here has a mean bone in their body. Attorney Mark Fancher means well because he wishes us well, and he's working to that end. He has dedicated his life to working to serve the least of these, the people whose cases nobody wants to touch. He is all in, all 10 toes down in on these cases. Dr. LaShawn Latrice is working with the people who nobody understands. These are folks that are just too loud, they're too rambunctious, they need to be in jail. No, she said, no, there's something else going on here. So, you know, let us start understanding each other, okay? And let's not get so excited by these lights, y'all, because that's not what this is about, really. And so when you have the opportunity to get on this big stage, and that's something that my parents taught us, no, don't just get up here running your mouth. Oh, no. Remember, you are carrying your people with you. I told you that, Attorney Fancher and Dr. LaShawn Latrice. I don't think you heard this. The night that we introduced Reverend at the Democratic Convention in 1988, it was the first time you'd ever seen a presidential candidate's children introduce him. And people said, wow, well, you can speak to that, Mark, because I was in the moment. I didn't want to do it. I was like, can my brother do it? He said, no, each one of you will have a little something to say, and Daddy's proud of you. And before we went into the convention center, he said, okay, we had to ride all packed up in this Secret Service car that was for the lead agent, the supporting agent, and my parents. All 7 of us were in that back seat. I don't know how we did it. It was like a college prank. But my father wanted to speak with us before we went into the building. And he said, now, I want you to know tonight when we walk away from this, we might become the most prominent Black family in America, if not the world. But this is not for you. He's talked about Esther Thompson, the lead usher at Push. She cleaned toilets at a hospital in Robbins, Illinois. It's a poor Black suburb. This is for the Moores, the Moore family. They were one of our foundational families at Push. And the Moores were a working class Black family who lived in Inglewood. But boy, were they a wonderful family. And we spent almost every Saturday with them. We'd go and play with the kids. It was just big fun. He said, for all these nameless, faceless people who we've seen along the way, this is for them. Somebody, you have an opportunity that their children don't have. And we're going to show the world what a Black family looks like. So we were not even allowed to get caught up in that moment as people were coming to us the next day, they wanted to do all these stories, blah, blah, blah. My parents put a limit on that. They said, okay, that's nice. But that's what this was. When God gives you the platform, it's never about you. It's always about who you're going to touch, y'all. It really is. Because the fact that you're on the platform means that you already have more than enough. You're supposed to be touching somebody who ain't got nothing at all. But what you're giving them is hope. So you got to speak about DEI. You got to just drop it. Or drop something in there. Like she dropped in there affirmative action. Yeah, you got to drop something. You got to drop it. So you give me a kernel of hope, something to hold on to. So when I push in that way, I'm going to continue to push. Because I know these platforms are not for the individual. God needs to use you. You know what my mama said in a sermon one day, Attorney Fancher, and Dr. LaShawn Latrice, because I can't help but think you really are ministerial. She said Jesus needs some street fighters. He needs some folks who get out in these streets and fight for him. You can't be cute as a Christian. You gotta what must Jesus bear the cross alone and all the world go free? Oh no. There's a cross for everyone. One for you and one for me. So I don't mind people taking their shots. Take them at me. I'm with it. But I'm always gonna fight for you. And if I get an opportunity, as we do have on this platform, to speak for the least of these, I'm gonna do it. And I'm gonna challenge other people who have bigger platforms than this to do it. All people, not just Black people, anyone who's living under the downside of advantage, they deserve that. They need you. You know how many white people walk up to me? We have white folks who came in, some of our morning stars. They just wanted to be a part because they want to be a part of something we're moving toward justice. Come on, y'all. So, hey, I'm just telling you, we got to do better. We got to do right. I have about 5 minutes left here. Dr. LaShawn Latrice, I'm going to give a couple of minutes to you and a couple of minutes to Attorney Fancher. Dr. LaShawn Latrice.
Thank you. I'm just going to end by saying the word says man would rather believe a lie than the truth. When I hear that scripture, I'm reminded about what I see taking place in the political world. Many people who are advantaged enough to know or privileged enough to know what is going on behind the scenes. And then there's the reality on the other side. I just caution people to understand that there is a world of people who are being silenced. They're extremely voiceless. They feel like getting up to go and vote is something that they should caution themselves not to do because it's not worth it or their voice doesn't matter. In order to plug people in and get them to understand that there's power in unity, you have to include the voices of those who you think are less important. And I think once the DNC understands that, and those who represent the DNC understand what DEI is and what affirmative action means and how important these topics, many of them which have just been completely overlooked, when they understand that, they will get the picture. But for right now, it's going to still take those of us who are not afraid to roll up our sleeves and get out there and push back. And that's my spiel today.
Well, no, I mean, that's the word. Because really, you can't be afraid to push back. You're supposed to do that. You're supposed to speak truth to power. Yeah, it got Jesus in trouble, but we're still talking about Jesus all these years later. Guess what? Guess who didn't die on that balcony, April 4th, 1968? Dr. King is more alive, more relevant today. Malcolm X is more alive, more relevant today.
Absolutely.
Look, look, touch not my anointed and do his prophets no harm. Trust and believe. Now, you can't just live for the world, y'all. There's something beyond here. Attorney Fancher.
Yeah, when my son was about 8 or 9 years old, he asked he said, Jesus was out there. He was tempted by the devil. He said, I'll give you the world if you'll just bow down and worship me. And he had him right there. Why didn't he just kill Satan right there and save us all a lot of trouble? So I said, well, let me take you to the pastor and let you pose that question to him. And the pastor's response was, yeah, he could have done that, but he was modeling for us. He was showing us how to deal with those kinds of temptations when they come our way. He wanted us to know how to do it when Satan comes and tries to tempt us, because he wants us to be strong enough morally to be able to resist evil. And so I think that Jesus set a good example, and I think that all of us have the choice of following that example if we choose to. I was so thrilled, enchanted, excited by Reverend Jackson's campaigns for president, because I think that that's the choice he made. He had the choice of going the way of the world. If he'd listened to people who were political operatives and who calculated how to win the presidency, he would not have run the campaign that he ran, which broke all of the rules. He went and he chased after the least of these and tried to elevate them. He brought people in who had been excluded and marginalized. He went and talked to people around the world that people who were in high places were not supposed to talk to. And the day after his speech at the convention, I was on a plane to Nicaragua. When I got there, people in Nicaragua were fired up about Reverend Jackson. People all over the world were fired up about Reverend Jackson because he chose to go and follow the way of the Lord rather than to follow the ways of the world. And so as Jesus modeled for us, Reverend Jackson modeled for us. As people know, I reject the Democratic Party, I reject the Republican Party. But for those who want to stay in this, there's a way it can be done. Just stay true to what you know is supposed to be right, regardless of what the consequences are. Don't try and calculate things. Just do what's right and let the chips fall where they may, because those who follow that path will enjoy the protection of the Father.
Amen. Amen and amen. God bless you, everybody. I love you so much. See you tomorrow on the Santita Jackson Show.